Hey there, teachers. Today, I'm going to be walking you and your young artist through creating these really fun and amazing recycled line-themed sculptures. So for this, we're going to need just a few supplies, and I'm dividing this video up a little bit differently than I normally do. Usually when I do a video, I dive right into the lesson so you can play the video for your students. But there is a little bit of prep when it comes to this project. So for the first couple of minutes in this video, I'm going to be chatting directly with you, the educator, the teacher, the homeschool mom, and share with you my tips and tricks of making this project successful. And then I'll dive into speaking directly to your artist and sharing with them the process, which I know they're going to love. So for this project, I grabbed a bunch of boxes. And while I was tinkering around, I did notice something. Some boxes are a lot thicker cardboard, while others are thinner. It actually goes a lot easier if you can use that thinner cardboard. The thicker is a little bit more difficult to bend for students to use. So keep that in mind. And then you're also going to be using an ink-filled bingo dauber with your students. You can purchase empty bingo daubers, and I fill them with India ink and then add a splash of water just to dilute the ink a little bit, and because the ink can be kind of expensive, make it so that I can have a little bit go a long way. I always test out my bingo daubers before giving them to students. Now let's talk about cutting this cardboard. Your students are going to be drawing a variety of lines on that cardboard, and once finished, you're going to slice that cardboard up into pieces. It goes a lot faster if you have one of these cardboard cutting tools. This one is a rechargeable one. I have had it for months. I've only charged it one time. And you see it slices really quickly through the cardboard. I would not do this with students around just because they may be tempted to use it, although it does have a safety on it. Now, if you want to, you could keep the pieces of artwork organized on a plate, maybe have students put their name on a plate. That way they all can get their same pieces back once they're cut. Next up, you're going to be putting notches in the cardboard. I'm using cardboard cutting scissors. You can see they're really big, and I have all the links for these supplies down below. They work great because they cut so easily. You could get maybe one pair of these scissors per table and have your older students use them. That way it saves your hand a little because this would be a lot of work. You're cutting a 1-inch notch on probably 2 to all 4 sides of the cardboard. Really, the choice is yours. You could have students use this with regular scissors, although I have tried it and I found it to be a little bit difficult. However, if you have students who are early finishers who need a little something to do, giving them a big box of all of these little painted cardboard shapes that they can cut about 1 inch into using those scissors, I say go for it. Now, here's something that I learned. It's important that the cut that you make on the cardboard be about 1 inch long. Previously, when I was doing it, I made it a lot shorter, and then the pieces didn't always fit well together when I was assembling my sculpture. So it seems a little bit like you shouldn't make the cut that deep, but it actually works out a lot better if you do. And if you are going to, like I said, keep these organized by student, just put them back on the plate with the student's name. You could also use your electric cutter. I actually didn't enjoy doing it this way. I found it a little bit tricky to use, and sometimes I was a little worried about my fingers. Now, on that very first day when students dive into this project, all they're going to need is a piece of cardboard, maybe an idea sheet, and an ink-filled bingo dauber. For the piece of cardboard, it doesn't even have to be a beautifully cut piece of cardboard. It can just be a scrap because remember, we are chopping these into pieces for their sculpture. I like to test out the bingo daubers before passing them out to students. So usually before my students arrive to class, I just take the cap off of each, draw a couple of lines on a sheet of paper just to make sure that the ink is flowing because sometimes the felt tip can get a little bit dry. So you might want to do that, or you could have your students do it even on a piece of newspaper like I'm doing here. Then once they're ready to get started, they can dive into drawing their lines on their cardboard. Now, if you want to keep up with each individual student's piece of cardboard and their design, have them write their name on the back, and then they're going to actually be drawing lines on both sides of the cardboard, but the ink does dry quickly, so they'll need to write their name small and in a visible place if you're going to keep up with each piece of cardboard. Me, personally, I wouldn't. I would let them know, hey, this is for a community share. We're going to be sharing these pieces. That way they know ahead of time when they come to the next art class and find their work of art has been chopped into bits and thrown into a shallow cardboard box in the middle of the table with their neighbors, they won't be devastated or surprised. So that choice is up to you. But for now, I'm going to stop chatting with you and start talking with your artists and walk them through the steps of this project. Well, hello there, artists. Today we are going to start creating some amazing cardboard sculptures. We're going to be reviewing different kinds of lines, painting lines, and even creating lines out of chenille sticks in a variety of colors. Then we're going to put the whole thing together. But before we get started, let's grab a piece of cardboard and draw some lines. For the first step, we're going to be using something called a paint marker. A paint marker is this little gadget here, and it's filled with permanent ink. Permanent meaning if you get this ink on your clothes, it won't come off. So for that reason, we have 3 important rules to follow when we use the paint marker. We never need to squeeze it really hard to get the ink to come out because too much ink will come out. We never need to shake it to get the ink to come out because it might splatter and get on us. And we never need to press really hard to get it to work because then too much ink will come out. So these are the 3 rules. No shaky, no squeezy, no pressy really hardsy. If you can remember those 3 things when you're making your lines on your cardboard, you'll do great. Now your cardboard can go up and down or vertically like mine, or side to side or horizontally. Your goal is to draw lines just like you see on this sheet with Larry the Line. Draw lines from one side of your piece of cardboard to the other side. You want to draw a variety or a bunch of different kinds of lines on your cardboard to make it interesting. Now the ink will dry really quickly. You'll know when it's dry because it won't look shiny on your cardboard anymore. When it's no longer shiny, you can flip it over and draw some more lines on the back. So today we're drawing lines from one side of our piece of cardboard to the other side. Now I did speed up the video a little bit here, which is why it looks like I'm going really quickly. These pieces of cardboard that we're making our lines on are going to be cut into pieces and used for our sculpture. So the next time that you see these pieces of cardboard, they're going to be cut into pieces so that we can create our sculpture. And would you look at that? Here they are. Now, not only are they cut into pieces, but there's little notches, not nachos, notches cut into each piece. To get your sculpture to fit together, you'll need to wiggle those little notches, not nachos, together like you're wiggling a tooth, because that's how you're going to fit the pieces together. That's right, you're going to slide one notch, not nacho, into the other, and would you look at that? You have the beginning of your sculpture. A sculpture is a work of art that is interesting to look at all the way around. It's different than when you're working on a drawing or a painting on a piece of paper because that is flat and it needs to look good just from the front. A sculpture has to look interesting all the way around. So as you are assembling or putting together the pieces of your sculpture, fitting the notches, not nachos, together, always rotate, that means turn, your sculpture so that you can see it, say it with me, all the way around. Sometimes if the pieces of your sculpture won't slide in and fit easily, like I'm having a little trouble here, it just means you need to wiggle the teeth of the sculpture a little bit more to get them to fit. As long as you're patient and go slowly and be a problem solver. Instead of getting frustrated, stop and think, why isn't this working? And then find the solution. It'll go a lot more easily and you'll have more fun if you think of it that way instead of just getting frustrated. So if ever the pieces aren't fitting, stop and think, I wonder why this isn't working. Probably because you need to give the little sculpture teeth a bit of a wiggle. Now your sculpture can be as big or as wide as you like. And also notice here, sometimes if those little notches aren't big enough, you could use some scissors to make them bigger. And that might help them fit better. Now, once you think your sculpture is looking pretty good and you've got it big enough and you've looked at it all the way around to check all of the different sides, then your sculpture may be at a little bit of a stopping point, because the next phase of our sculpture is we're going to introduce another art supply. So once you have this to a good size, we are going to start using something called chenille sticks or pipe cleaners. These are fun because you can use these to make different kinds of lines. Let's make a zigzag. So I'm just pinching where I've made an angle, holding it still and bending the pipe cleaner up. Pinch again to hold it still, bend it down. And I just keep doing that until I have a zigzag. I'm going to leave a little bit of a long tail at the end because that's where I'll fit it into my sculpture. So on your sculpture, you may notice that some of the cardboard has a little bit of a wiggly line. That is where you can fit in your pipe cleaner. You're going to slide it into one of those line wiggles. Ta-da! And it will stay put. To make a curvy line, I'm just going to wrap the pipe cleaner around my fingers and slide it out. Isn't that so cool? It looks a little bit like Larry, like a wavy line. And I'm going to slide it into that, speaking of wavy line, of my sculpture. I can even make a spiral by wrapping it around my fingers. And if ever you make a line design that you don't like, you just take it between your fingers to straighten it back out. Always look for the wavy line on the sculpture to get it to fit. And don't forget to rotate your sculpture to make sure it looks good all the way around. Here's a cool trick. Slide the pipe cleaner all the way through the cardboard. You have to do this, remember, on the side that's a wavy line. I'm going to use a long piece of pipe cleaner here to slide it all the way through. It looks like a little dude with arms. Now I can use these long lines, bend them around, and fit them into the wavy line of my sculpture, or maybe even bend them to make them more interesting. I told you this sculpture is going to be super fun, especially when we start to add more elements and lines to it. Now I'm going to connect this by putting it into that wavy line of my sculpture and then take the other end of the pipe cleaner and anchor it into another wavy line on that piece of cardboard on my sculpture. Now I'm just looking at it all the way around, looking for any empty spaces or any places I need to fill. I'm going to take another long pipe cleaner. Now here's the deal. A pipe cleaner has wire in it, and that's what helps it bend and hold its shape. The problem with the wire is if we leave it just sticking out of our sculpture, it might be a little bit dangerous for somebody who's looking at it or for us when we're carrying it. So you need to always make sure to put something on top, a little topper of that wire. Let me show you what I mean. I'm going to make a bunch of little lines and stick them into the wavy line of the cardboard, but they've got that wire exposed or sticking up, which we know is kind of dangerous. So I cut a little piece of cardboard into smaller pieces and use that on top of my sculpture. That not only adds more element of design and variety to look at, but also prevents those pieces of wire from sticking out and possibly hurting someone. Just when you think your sculpture is finished, make sure to rotate it all the way around, looking for any empty places that might need some more sculpture. And when you're finished, you're going to have a unique and amazing work of art. Check it out. It's got different kinds of lines and shapes. You made sure that your sculpture was interesting all the way around. It has balance. It can actually stand up. I cannot wait to see how amazing your sculptures turn out. Most of all, I hope that you have fun. Toodles!